Hi there, Smart Driver. Talking to you today about situational awareness, probably the most critical skill for defensive driving and keeping yourself safe and preventing a crash when you're operating a motor vehicle. This is what we're talking about today. We're going to give you tips, strategies, and techniques that you can put in place to keep yourself safe when you're driving. And it's not just driving, it's everything that you do in your life. You're walking on a busy road, on a sidewalk, and there's lots of pedestrians and those types of things. You're downtown Vancouver, or you're in Seattle, or Houston, Texas. You need to have situational awareness of who's around you and those types of things to get to where you're going. It's the same thing with driving. And situational awareness is going to be different depending on what kind of road you're on. So if you're in a congested, busy city highway, your situational awareness is going to be different than if you are on a rural 2-lane highway. Know that when you're driving that these things are going to be different, and you're going to have to put in place different kinds of space management. But again, 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic, 1 vehicle length, mapping and tracking other road users, and looking and determining speed of other vehicles so that you can maintain that space in front of your vehicle. Resources to have a look at: shoulder checking. Corey will put up this video on mastering shoulder checks. And Gigi, this is definitely a video you want to have a look at for getting your driver's license. 5 tips for driving in cities and driving in congestion. And most of these tips are from the city of New York and the city of Montreal, where I was driving there and did some of these tips to keep yourself safe and have situational awareness in the city. Of course, over the years, people have come back to me and said, oh, you can't do that. That's not possible. I had somebody over the weekend come back to me and say 4 second following distance on a freeway is not feasible, I think was the wording that they used, and were telling me about their adaptive cruise control that it only sets at 2 seconds. Adaptive cruise control on most vehicles can be set at 2 seconds, 4 seconds, or 6 seconds on most models. I'm not aware of any other differences in the vehicles that I've driven over the years with adaptive cruise control, that it's 2 seconds, 4 seconds, or 6 seconds. If you can set it at 4 seconds, that is going to be absolutely ideal for you when you're driving on highways and freeways. I disagree strongly. 4 seconds is not feasible. I can put up all kinds of dash cam footage of when I'm driving. Yes, I don't drive the posted speed limit for the most part. However, I am almost always with the 4 second following distance in front of my vehicle when I'm driving. Swimming and barbecues. When we have situational awareness, we have an idea of the risk involved when we're driving. Somebody is tailgating us. We have a risk, a danger meter of how high that's going to go and what potentially could happen to us when we're involved in a crash. Most of the time, we don't think that we're going to be in trouble. And it's the same thing with barbecuing. We don't think, well, we're out barbecuing, having fun with the family, making dinner and those types of things, that potentially the barbecue could catch on fire and catch your entire house on fire. We don't think about those kinds of things. And it's the same thing with swimming. Of course, in this day and age with lifeguards at public pools and those types of things, and nobody can let their kids go swimming and whatnot, within arm's reach and whatnot, you need to understand what is the inherent risk with driving. And this is why that you need to have situational awareness to keep yourself safe and not being involved in a crash. The other piece about situational awareness is that most people think that they are safe because the average driver only crashes once every 15 to 17 years. And they've gone through the same intersection 1,000 times and nothing has ever happened to them. The one time that they go through the intersection, something changes in the environment slightly and they're involved in a crash because they weren't that one time paying attention, or they didn't develop the habits that would have prevented that crash in that scenario. For example, I drive out of my back driveway here every day, and times out of 100 there's nobody in the alleyway when I back out into the alleyway to leave my house. It's that 2 times, that small percentage of the time, that we need to put in place situational awareness and defensive driving habits that are going to keep us safe when we're driving. Okay, priorities when driving, because there are times that you need to pay attention more so than other times that you're driving. For example, you're on a low density traffic highway and there's not a lot going on. You're on cruise control, you're listening to the radio, you're having a conversation with your friend, those types of things. You don't really have to pay attention other than what's going on behind you, with the traffic behind you and the traffic in front of you, and adjust accordingly. Now, if you're in a city with congestion and you're going through intersections, you need to be on high alert due to the fact that 40% of crashes happen at intersections. In addition to that, intersections in busy cities are the places where you're most likely to encounter vulnerable road users, and we're going to see more and more vulnerable road users as we get more and more electric vehicles on our roadways, more electric scooters, more electric skateboards, more electric bicycles. This is just going to increase in numbers as these machines become more and more affordable and people are turning to them as alternative forms of transportation. There are times that you need to be on high alert, but most of the time you can just simply be on yellow alert, low yellow alert, if there's such a thing, but low yellow alert where you're paying attention to what's going on in the driving environment and you're implementing those skills. You're shoulder checking every time you're changing directions of the vehicle. Every time you're turning, you're shoulder checking, you're scanning, ABS, always be scanning, and you're maintaining that space in front of your vehicle so that you can have that situational awareness around yourself and monitoring what's going on in traffic and how traffic is changing when you're driving. Smarter defensive driving. Social driving is the way that everybody drives after they get their license. There is no recommendation for anybody who has a driver's license driving a car for them to do professional development. And it's the same thing with CDL licenses. In the province of British Columbia, I am not required to do any professional development for my truck driver's license or my bus license, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. At least in the province of Ontario, every 5 years you had to go in and rewrite the theory test. But as far as defensive driving, maybe on the part of the industry and the company that you're working for, but truck drivers, bus drivers have no requirement to do professional development. And as soon as, only when that starts to come into play will they truly be professional drivers. So social driving is the way that everybody else drives after they get their driver's license. They're speeding, they're not coming to a complete stop at stop sign intersections, they're talking on their cell phones, they're distracted. Infotainment centers in cars now are distracting everybody. So everybody is distracted and not paying attention to what's going on in the driving environment. The tools in your defensive driving toolkit are space management, your 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length, observation, ABS, always be scanning, speed management, controlling speed to have space around your vehicle, and then finally communication, the ways that you communicate with other traffic on the roadway, the position of your vehicle, speed, lights and signals, horn and eye contact, and hand gestures. You can use hand gestures if you're not sure what the other person on the roadway is doing, a cyclist or a kid on an e-scooter or those types of things. Where am I? Sitting in traffic? Are you driving along a highway and passing other vehicles? Are you still learning to determine gap and you're turning left at a complex intersection? So oncoming traffic crossing the lane of traffic. And this is something that truck drivers particularly struggle with. They're making right-hand turns and they're swinging wide to compensate for the off-tracking of the trailer. Had a lot of stuff going on social media now because of the wide use of dash cams. And yes, a lot of drivers are putting dash cams in their vehicles to determine fault because they believe that they are good drivers and it's the other driver that has to change. It's not me. But dash cams, keep this in mind. If you decide that you are going to in fact get a dash cams are watching you too. They're not just watching other drivers on the roadway and other road users. Different driving environments are going to require different levels of situational awareness and what is going on in your driving environment. And it was going back to what Gigi was saying there previously, that driving in Armstrong or Vernon, these little sort of interior towns of 1,500, 2,000 people that live here. Okay, probably 50,000 people live in Vernon. However, it is very different than driving in Vancouver, British Columbia, or driving in Toronto, Ontario, or Dallas, Texas. That requires a much higher and acute level of situational awareness when you're driving and mapping and tracking other road users. Driving environments, residential, industrial, parks and school areas, multi-lane cities, schools, 2-lane cities, freeways and interstates, rural country roads, towns and villages. All of these different kinds of driving environments are going to require different situational awareness. If you're on a rural country road in southwestern Ontario where my mom lives, you have horse and buggies, Mennonites. And as well, you're going to have tractors. And I just put up a short there the other day about side-by-sides and ATVs. In many of these rural towns now, people are driving around in side-by-sides and ATVs as opposed to driving around in their personal vehicles. Experiential, where to focus, driving habits that will protect you, shoulder checking, always be scanning when you're driving. Maintain your 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to say, if I maintain the 3 to 4 second following distance, then somebody's going to cut in. Yes, every now and again, somebody's going to cut in. But for the most part, people are not going to cut in, and you're going to have that space in front that you're going to be able to work. You're going to be able to map and track other road users. You're going to be able to read traffic patterns and interpret the actions of the individual road users when you're driving. Because other drivers are distracted, they're drowsy, they're drinking late at night. If you're out at midnight, between midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, there are people on the roadway who are going to be high. They're going to be inebriated in some way. And as well, it's not just alcohol and marijuana and other illegal drugs. Over-the-counter medications and prescription medications are the most abused drugs for motorists. Many people are abusing these drugs and they're operating motor vehicles. Develop the driving habits. Put these habits in place that will keep you safe, because they will not keep you safe today, tomorrow, 6 months from now, 6 years from now. But maybe in 8 years from now, these driving habits will prevent you from being involved in a crash. And the right information, and we talked about this, I had a poll up some years ago about, what is the biggest reason that people get into crashes? And most people said that it's new drivers. They lack the experience of being able to determine when they're in danger when they're driving. And it's this driving intuition that we've talked about in the last few live streams, that you need a certain amount of experience. And Marion was saying this, she's been driving for 2 or 3 years now, that she's beginning to understand and be able to know when other people are going to do something goofy. For example, they don't signal, but they're the vehicle. There's a change in position of the vehicle. If you're watching and paying attention to what's going on, the vehicle starts to drift to the right and slow down at the same time, and you're like, oh, okay, that person hasn't signaled, but they're going to turn right at the next intersection. People going to change lanes in front of you, they don't signal, but they move to the left, and they're looking and they're kind of slowing down, and there's a slight change in speed, and the next thing you know, they're changing lanes and they didn't signal. This is going to happen as you get more experience, that you're going to be able to tell what's going on in the driving environment, because you've developed this intuition where you're paying attention and understanding the nuances in changes in the traffic that's around you, and it's part of your situational awareness that you're going to learn as you get more driving experience. So good luck on your driver's test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. We're talking about situational awareness, knowing what is around you, the 6 factors of driving: the driver, the vehicle, the road, traffic, light, and weather. Those are the 6 components that you're dealing with when driving, and these 6 factors are always changing. And because they're always changing, this is the reason that AI cars cannot drive by themselves as of yet. And they say this, and it's on social media, that these cars have driven hundreds of thousands of miles, millions of miles without incident, without accident. But the thing is that there are crews always monitoring these vehicles for when they get into trouble. The self-driving feature of the Teslas stuff is coming to light, where they get stuck in traffic, they can't deal with the situation, those types of things. And this is why we're not moving forward with self-driving cars. Unfortunately, as well, we've had a few fatalities with self-driving cars, which has eroded the trust in these vehicles, because me personally, I am not comfortable in a vehicle that's driving itself. That is just completely foreign to me. We are in that transition period where these vehicles can't do this. We need, as drivers, the situational awareness. This is the component that we need to have in place to keep ourselves safe. This is the component that they can't completely figure out in terms of self-driving cars, and this is why humans are better at it than self-driving cars. Now, not to say that humans don't have crashes, because they do, and they make mistakes all the time. But to be a safer, smarter driver, you need to have situational awareness of what's going on around your vehicle. And you need to be aware of those 6 different factors when you're driving: the vehicle, other vehicles on the roadway, the vehicles that comprise and make up the traffic in the vicinity where you're driving, the drivers of those vehicles, that can be any different kind of driver, right, with wide varying degrees of skill. They can be operating any kind of vehicle, so that those combinations are always going to change and make traffic different when you're driving. Your biggest skill when you're driving is your following distance and stopping back in traffic one vehicle length. If you can do that, you have time to monitor and map and track other road users to have situational awareness. And we know that the number one crash on our roadways is rear end crashes. So you have to be aware of what's to the rear of you and maintain that space behind you. And I can tell you this, the other day I was driving down to Kelowna and I look in the mirror behind me and there's two guys in a truck and they're like right on my bumper. And I'll tell you, I was banging on the brake pedal to flash the brake lights because I am not comfortable with people sitting on my bumper. And, you know, now that we've started talking about this in the last year or so, I've been paying a lot of attention to how close people are driving behind me. And I have noticed that a lot of people tailgating. Now, I don't know whether this is something that has been changing in the last little while, or it's just that I'm more aware of it, but there are a lot of people who are tailgating me and I'm on the brakes, you know, flashing the brake lights saying, hey, you are too close, get off my bumper, because they do not like people, you know, trying to park their vehicle in my trunk. Blind spot detectors, backup cameras, proximity sensors, convex mirrors is the other one that I was thinking of. These technologies are just a backup to good driving skills. Shoulder checking. Marion says it's been changing lately. It bugs me greatly. And yes, and yeah, it seems to be that everybody is tailgating you. And I don't know what this is, that people are in a rush or they just don't want to keep space in front of their vehicle. But again, it comes back to you as a driver and having situational awareness and tapping on that brake pedal to flash the brake lights behind you and say, hey, you are too close. I am not comfortable with you being back there, because you're going to be rear-ended and you do not want to be rear-ended, because there are no safety features in the vehicle that protect you beyond the head restraint. And the only thing that the head restraint done is prevent your head from snapping back and breaking your neck, but you're still going to sustain soft tissue damage in your shoulders and your neck if you're involved in a rear end crash. And the other problem with it is that you slide down under the seatbelt. The seatbelt does not protect you in the event of a rear end crash. Know that, and, you know, have situational awareness and indicate to other people behind you. And, you know, if they're not going to back off when you're flashing the brake lights, find a safe place to pull over, get over into the other lane, right? And the other piece, when we get into congestion, especially with Marion and those types of things, you're in large cities, in Vancouver, Kelowna, where I was driving, sometimes you just can't get into the other lane. You're maintaining your space in front, and you're just in a cluster of vehicles. And even if the person gets past you, they're only going to go up and sit behind the car in front of you that you're maintaining your following distance from, because the cars are all grouped up. And for whatever reason in North America here, people just refuse to get out of that passing lane. Almost always pickup trucks, Marion. Yes, it's almost always pickup trucks for sure. And, you know, other types of vehicles. Subaru drivers get a lot of grief as well when we're driving and whatnot. And, you know, there are different people that will give you different groups of people that are definitely responsible for tailgating and whatnot. But yes, pickup trucks are definitely documented as being more aggressive on our roadways, and people that drive pickup trucks, and they're not even really pickup trucks anymore. They're just big SUVs with a box on the back that isn't good for anything because it's so small. The boxes on these pickup trucks now are only 5.5 feet long. So, you know, they make room for the crew cab where you can sit six people in a pickup truck. So it's kind of a van with a little box on the back of it. I digress. But situational awareness, this is what we're talking about, keeping yourself safe, taking note of those 6 factors. And especially now that we're coming into fall and winter time, we're going to get shorter days. You're going to be more likely to be driving at night. You're going to have to be picking the landmarks along the roadway, paying attention to traffic, following other traffic, because for the most part, other traffic is going to be staying on the roadway. People driving at night have difficulty determining where the road is and where it's going. So you need to be looking far down the road, determining where the road is going, especially for those of us who live here in the mountains. You know, the roadways are curvy and turny and up the hill and down the hill and over the hill and around the blueberry bush and those types of things. So you need to be paying attention and mapping and tracking what's going on in the driving environment. The other piece with wintertime coming in fall, we haven't got into frost yet. It hasn't got that cold yet, but we will get into frost and ice and the proverbial black ice pretty soon on the roadways. Bridges and overpasses freeze first. Anywhere that high elevations, low elevations, anywhere that the roadway runs near a body of water. And anytime that you have precipitation in the air, you have fog overnight, or it's snowed and you have snow on the roadways and it's been melting, and then during the day and then overnight it gets cold and it freezes, that's when you're going to get ice on the roadways. Paul, my friend, drivers need to be disciplined by waiting at the light until myself finished crossing. I was wearing a headband flashlight to get drivers' attention. Yes, and at night, as a pedestrian, and I know this because I walk a lot, and at night, drivers do not stop, not because they're arrogant for the most part. Drivers don't stop because they don't see you. And what Paul is saying, yes, wear a headlamp and then that way other drivers will see you. But there was something on social media today, I didn't read it, I should have stopped and read it. It said that regardless of what pedestrians are wearing, whether they're wearing reflective clothing or not, drivers don't see them, drivers don't pay attention to them, and drivers do not take evasive action. So take note of that when you're walking at night and keep yourself safe. And again, situational awareness. And the other thing about walking at night, do not wear headphones because sound is so important, and you can hear vehicles coming. You know where they are on the roadway by the sound when you're walking. Situational awareness, have that in place, keep yourself safe. ABS, always be scanning, 3 to 4 second following distance and stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length for your best defensive posturing. Have those driving habits in place, keep yourself safe, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.